Your generous support makes this ministry possible. Thank you.
Genograms. Remember them? Love them? Need them? Going to do them? If you remember, again, what we are trying to do by looking at some of these individuals and all the interconnectedness that goes on. It's more than just a family tree, right? You like that word? Interconnectedness. It's a fun word. It's giving an idea beyond just the biological connections to the dynamic relationships, the emotional connections, the psychosocial connections, if you want to be a little more clinical in your wordings. It talks about the ideas that it's more than just biology. And when we looked at that in a number of passages as well, like in Deuteronomy chapter 6, we saw that it's actually for good that the blessings, the encouragement, the responsibility of family to carry on the laws of the Lord, to find the blessings and favor with God from one generation to the next, or the Exodus 34, where you see it for the bad. That he is a gracious God, slow to anger, but he will not leave the guilty unpunished, and visiting the iniquities of the father upon the third and fourth generations as well. That's not to say sin is a biological, genetic, inheritable trait, but the effects of which is why we come to that wonderful phrase that you've all memorized now, that you are not determined, but you are, because you're not, but you are by your family, right? You cannot say, well, I had to sin because my dad did the same sin. It's genetic, to which I say, baloney. It's not genetic, but it is understandable why you may have a greater propensity. You may think that's okay, even though it's not okay, because of the ways that your family acted and did the things that they did. You're not determined, but you are affected. And what's helpful is to give people an understanding of some of the dynamics in their family, which may give them some understanding of why they think and do the things they do, so as to break the cycle, so as by the grace of God to actually change what's been the pattern in their families for many years. Another well-known family that's been with us for a while, perpetually stayed in a time warp apparently because they're still this age. And some of the issues that they have as well. There are some grandparents in here, but I didn't put them in, but nevertheless, here they are. I did give this in a handout as well. A number of reasons why it's helpful to do a genogram. The idea of not just getting that information, asking those questions, not just jumping to the conclusion. Does any of that ring a bell? Okay, so there's this guy, and he's in it. No, I don't have another one. I'm sorry. That you don't want to just jump to the answer, but you want to know that there's a process of getting to the answer. We do believe in hope and answers and truth that are to be used and validated in a person's life, but we don't want to just assume that we know what it is and jump there when in fact that's actually not helpful. That this actually is part of the process of thinking and working and actually developing a relationship with someone. Remember the coin jar analogy that I gave you before? If you want to pull 35 cents out, of necessity, how much has to be in? At least 35, well, 25, and then another 10, and at least 35, right? You want to have at least in what you want to take out, all the stuff that's going on with that, right? Nevertheless, that's what we're trying to do here, that this is not just good for getting information. Understand, this is a good means for you building rapport with people as well, actually connecting with a person, finding out about them. Again, the only way you're going to build a relationship is through time, and the only thing you got to do is just do it. You can't fast forward that relationship building. So it's a number of things that it helps do as well. So with that said, what I want to do first is help you first understand the basics of constructing a genogram. All right, and we're going to go through this packet together. I know it's not the funnest to actually read through a packet together, but we're actually going to draw some of this so you understand. Again, not just so we can do it here in class, but also because you guys are going to be required to do this yourself. Let me say from the onset, this is where I'm going to turn the lights back on here. Constructing a genogram is both an art and a science. What I mean by that is that while we do have some general guidelines of how to build them, they're not set in stone. And I am okay, hear me say this, okay? I am okay with you making adjustments as needed, especially when you make your genogram. That I want the standards, the general boundaries of how to construct a genogram that we're going to go through, but at the same time I realize you have situations in your family, realities that need to be explained in your genogram that may not fit according to the letter and the law that I'm giving you here, and I'm okay with you kind of being a little flexible with it on how you explain the realities in your family and genogram, all right? So that's why I say it's an art and a science. So that's why I actually recommend you start the process now, but I give you the whole semester to work on it so that you can get the information you needed. Most of you aren't near home, near family, so you're going to have to talk to them on the phone or talk to them at Thanksgiving or wherever. So you got to get the information, and it's going to take some time to actually do it, which is why I want to give you the whole semester so you can come talk to me. If you have questions, we can kind of go through it throughout the semester, all right? So let's do this first, all right? Starting on page 1. Mapping the family structure. See that right underneath there? The backbone of the genogram is a graphic depiction of how different family members are biologically and legally related to one another from one generation to the next. That's at its core, okay? And that's what you saw. At first blush, it just looks like a big old family tree. Grandma, parents, kids, and that's a biological connection. So we realize that at some point. Turn the page over. So this is where we start getting into the actual construction, because there are some specific realities that go into that, all right? First off, the male. Why is the male square? Because guys are square. They're just weird that way, okay? However you want to remember it, remember guys are square. Nevertheless, understand guys are square, girls are circles, all right? Generally speaking. If you look under diagram above 2.2, the identified patient, which again, I know when you're working with yourself or others, you're not a patient in that sense, but essentially what we're saying, this is the person we're talking to. So if you're talking to me and you're constructing Ben Matthews' genogram, you need to identify where Ben Matthew is on that grid. The way you do that is for males, double boxes, or if I'm talking to Susie and I'm doing hers, you're identifying Susie as the identifying individual that we're constructing the genogram around, 2 circles, okay? So when you guys are making your genogram, who is the identifying patient? Yourselves. So you're either a double box if you're a guy or a double circle if you're a girl. And I expect to see somewhere in that genogram of your family and you, I want you identified somewhere. Okay? So I can quickly look at it and say, oh, double boxes, double. Oh, there they are right there. It's a quick way of seeing where you fit into the whole pattern of all this. All right? You got a question? That was it. Okay. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Birth dates and death dates. Now, I am not going to require you to give a birth date and death date for everyone in your family. It is helpful, though, at times to indicate certain information. For instance, let's say you're working with a family. So we're going to get into this here in a bit. This is a husband and wife, all right? And they've got a bunch of kids. And this one, let's say you can either do it either as the day they were born or their current age. So this one was 12 years old, this one's 11, and this one's 10. Is there some information here that you find a little interesting? What?
That they're a year apart?
They're a year apart. That's pretty interesting, given why. Why is that helpful to know about this? For a lot of the early part of they just kept on having kids. Is there a difference between this and, say, this? How does that affect this relationship?
It's much farther apart, so like the one's going to be pretty much grown up by the time the other one's grown up.
I mean, that's actually some interesting information there, right? Comparatively, like for my kids, right? Elias and Zachary, they're 13 months apart from each other. Already, they do everything together. They enjoy each other. They hate each other. They do everything together, right? My own family, my brother and I, we have 5 years between us. We never went to the same school, never were in the same youth group together, never were in any of the same social groups. I mean, we were very different, and it wasn't until in college and later in life that we actually started being friends. Can I say it that way? I mean, we're always brothers, but now we're actually friends because we never had the similar social connections. So that information, if needed, if helpful to explain you and your life, may be helpful to put up, all right? Also, I'm not looking for you to put everyone that died in your family and the day they died and the year they died. I mean, for average people that die at average age. But again, if you have a situation here where, let's say, can you read that? 8 months? Is that pertinent information? What is that telling you right here?
Scared baby died.
That's a pretty traumatic event. Death is always traumatic. Don't get me wrong. I never want to minimize the death of a grandparent or a loved one at an elderly age. But even more so, this is a significant hardship for a family. All right? And so that kind of information is what I'm asking you. You don't need to put it down for everyone, but if there's significant information that you think is helpful for explaining the realities of your family, well, then put it in. And that's how you do it, right? Birth dates or the actual birth years, 19 years old, 8 months, whatever, current age, or death dates. How old were they when they died, or the idea. And again, death is an X, right?
What about adoption?
We are going to get there. It's a great question, because that's a significant reality for a family, right? And we're going to get into that. Yeah, right now we're just talking about kind of biological, strict biological. All right? Any questions with the male, female? Yeah.
Miscarriages?
We're going to get to that as well. Yep. In fact, turn the page. You guys are just working ahead of me. You're so excited about this. You just can't wait to do it. Good questions. You're going to see a bunch of them there, all right? Pregnancy, triangle, because not to say you can't find out nowadays if it's a boy or a girl, and so you can, I'm going to put a little square, this helps identify clearly, and we're not just talking about a little baby boy or a little baby girl inside the womb, which we believe is a full adult and a full human in that sense, but it's a pregnancy, yet still within the womb. So, for instance, that's the reality of my wife right now. So right there is right, because we're expecting our next child, so it's kind of cool that I, in my genogram right now, can put a little triangle. I'm going to have a triangle. This is great. I'm very excited about that. So, yet stillbirth is a little different. Can anyone first help me? I'm going to draw all three of these. You can help me understand this. Stillbirth, that's for a guy. That's a stillbirth for a girl. Spontaneous abortion and induced abortion. Stillbirth, guy, stillbirth, girl. Spontaneous abortion and induced abortion. Explain the difference.
Stillbirth is when you carry a baby full term, but then once born, it's dead.
Right. And in fact, if I can adjust that, clinically speaking now, actually it's not all the way to birth. It's actually a certain number of weeks. Does anyone know what a stillbirth is considered after how many weeks? 20 weeks. It's considered, technically speaking, a viable child can live outside the womb at 20 weeks. Not easily, under much care, and usually they put them into a neo-intensive care unit, but because of that reality, they consider it a stillbirth after 20 weeks. Some friends of ours had a little baby girl. It was after 20 weeks, and she had a stillbirth. They actually had to deliver the child, and they actually had a ceremony after they actually had a burial and things like that, because that's a little more progressed than this, which is known as a spontaneous abortion, which we know in today's language as what? Miscarriage, right? That's before 20 weeks, which is also different than a induced abortion. This is the one that obviously gets a lot of people concerned, rightfully so, because we do believe that life begins at conception, that it's a unique entity different than any of the original sperm or the egg and the chromosomes that come together to form a new person. Nevertheless, these are all still within the womb. That's essentially the similarity between these. Yeah.
I was just going to ask you, in secular counseling, would, I was just thinking, like, since they don't, the reason you can have an abortion is because they don't believe it's a child, you know, so would they put it in the same, do they have some issues putting it next to, you know?
Is that a concern enough to put it up on a genogram?
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but what the whole point of this is to see where there might be problems and where stuff.
Well, it depends. Again, even there are some secular, non-Christian therapists that still consider abortion wrong. So obviously those ones would consider it an important enough event to put up on here. Then you're going to get the far other extreme, that having an abortion is the same as getting knee surgery. You don't put knee surgery down on a genogram, so why would you put an abortion? It's just a medical thing. And so you're going to get the extremes, and you're going to get a variation within secular counseling as well. Unfortunately, I could even cite some Christian counselors that would probably think the same way as well, that don't have the conviction to know that an induced abortion is the killing of a human life. And that's even more concerning for Christians not having the sanctity of life as a firm conviction that much more. But does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah.
You're going to find the gambit within even secular theorists. Yeah. Any other questions with the children in the womb in terms of miscarriage, abortions, stillbirths, the differences between them? That's how you graphically show that. All right. So then going on, we have then a marriage. Okay, so this is me. This is my wife. And we got married, because we just put the 2 days, right? Yeah, 2 numbers. We got married. Oh yeah, okay, I better remember this. We got married in 2003, all right? We just celebrated our 6th year of marriage. 6 years of marriage. Yeah, I got to do the math real quick. So that's how a marriage looks, all right? Because I'm going to take my name off because it's not going to happen by God's grace. Sometimes you have to show a divorce as well. And that's how that's showed. Just 2 lines. And it's helpful at times to both show when they got married, and they put the example up here, 22 years. And you can probably guess what the S is. Yeah, and then divorced quite a ways later. Especially for dates that far back ago, divorce was a lot harder to get, which is why they probably just separated and didn't get a legal divorce until many years later. 1940s to get a divorce in itself was scandalous, much less trying to get a divorce in 1920s. All right? Does that make sense with that? Turn the page over. Then you have an example of this individual who, kind of like John 4, kind of opposite here, right? I mean, many husbands, many wives. And the examples they give here, and again, this is interesting because married 55, divorced 59. They got married again in 60, divorced in 70. Then married again in 80, separated in 83. Are you seeing any patterns here? Is anything coming up for you? Yeah. This was like a rebound relationship, right? But it lasted for a while. To where then it wasn't for a while that he got into another relationship. But generally speaking, what are you seeing here? Pardon?
A pattern.
There is a pattern, a concerning pattern, right? That this individual numerous times has been in relationships and is obviously not adequately dealing with whatever the issues are. Is it him alone? No, I'm not. There's 2 people always involved in these relationships, all right? But when I see something like this, the person that I'm working with, I start asking some questions. And that's the whole intent of this type of project, is that it gets you curious as to why so many marriages? What was going on here?
Especially since they ended divorce, not death.
That much more, right?
Now, is there a way to show, like, when there are children from the marriages and divorces, like where the children go?
Yeah, and we're going to get to that as well. No, that's okay. That's a good question because that's the whole point, right? If this is the reality for this generation, how does it affect the next generation? And we're definitely going to get into that, all right? Know this as well, and I'll try and start using the other board as well, that a lot of times if you're from a family where there's a divorce, he may get remarried and she may get remarried. say you're a product, and this is essentially Lacey answering your question. Say you and your brother are in this family. Okay, now what are these other people in your lives now considered? Step-parents. And what if they have previous marriages with other kids? What are they considered? Step-parents. I mean, all of a sudden, and what if they now have a new kid? What are they considered? Half-brother or sister, right? Are you starting to see how these... Understand, this is one of the biggest realities that we need to start dealing with within the church. Again, the church, generally speaking, has a divorce rate on par with the national average. There's not, unfortunately, a lot of difference. Beyond the divorce rate, we have what are known as blended families. This is a big reality within our churches. And we need to learn how to minister to these people because all these dynamics are coming into play. Of step-parents and step-brothers and sisters and half-brothers and sisters. And is it pretty? No, but welcome to life. And either we can judge over it and condemn, or we can say, let's get beyond the problem and start finding some hope and solutions. And again, that's what part of this is. There's no magic in this. It's not like you draw it out. No, your family's all of a sudden better. That's not the intent. It's to give some information, some clarity of some of the dynamics that are going on within the family. So a lot of times you're going to see this reality played out. It's not just one parent that gets divorced and the other one just stays there in suspended animation. They kind of both go on with their lives. But when they go on with their lives, it affects other lives too. It's all interconnected. All right? So that's what's trying to be explained at the bottom of page 12. Two partners who have each had multiple spouses. This I just draw one, but again, a lot of times you might see something like this. Generally speaking, okay, you put the guys on this side, the girls on this side. So if you're looking at the paper, guys on the left, girls on the right. Generally speaking. But then when you have these other realities coming in, essentially, the way I would encourage you to consider this is keep the generations on the same line. Does that make sense? So keep this generation on one line, and keep this generation on another line. Instead of trying to figure out, put her down here, and all of a sudden you start confusing the generations at that point. Kind of keep the generations, keep your parents, step-parents, uncles, aunts on one line, grandparents on another line, you, cousins, half-brothers, half-sisters, step-brothers, sisters on another line. Yep.
Okay, so that still kind of doesn't answer my question, because you know how when people get divorced, a lot of times the kids go with one parent or the other? Like, can you show that on the Genogram?
First priority is the biological connection, all right? And we are going to get to that as well, and I'll answer that. What we do in this situation, let's say, for instance, because first is the biological reality. Biological dad, biological mom, brother, sister, right? But let's say they got divorced, and dad got remarried to her, they have one kid, and she lives with them. We're going to get to this, but I'll show you just right now. Essentially what we do is we draw a line around them all. That shows us that this family lived together. Whereas the son went with the mom when she got remarried in this family. Usually it's a dotted line that's pretty predominantly seen, but nevertheless communicates to me when I see this, the family's been split up a bit here. Is that going to possibly affect this relationship? Yeah. Maybe for good, maybe for bad. But when we talk about not just the biological realities, now we're even getting to geographic realities. This family live in Seattle because that's where she's from, and she didn't want to leave work where she was working. So she took her and decided to go that way, whereas she has a really good job where they were living in Atlanta, and she didn't want to leave that. So he already had a lot of friends there, was already enrolled in school. She wanted to go to college in Seattle, so it worked out for her to go there. Are you seeing the point here? That it's not clean. It's not always neat. Don't get me wrong. I still think by God's grace we can hope for leave it to beaver type families. That's a good thing. We have to make fun of the beav and his family situation. That's the ideal, people. And I think by God's grace we should and can work towards a father and a mother and siblings in the same household. That's not crazy. That's not just TV life. That's what God wants for life. But we realize we live in a fallen world, and these realities come up. And so let's honestly look at them, figure out how we can help them, and get beyond the hardship of it to find some hope in it. is the whole idea. But what I love about this is it starts getting things out. Whenever I've done these, when I start working with people, inevitably we don't get through the whole genogram and then start looking at it. We actually start looking at it and the dynamics while we're doing this. That we start talking about this stuff, and I see that these siblings are been separated because of some other marriages, and inevitably that leads to discussion. She starts talking about how much she misses her brother, or how she feels about her, or how he feels about him. And I can't say, well, we're not done to genogram yet. We haven't completed all pages of the packet that I got. Don't talk about that now. No, that's the whole point of it, is to actually get the discussion going. Well, really, why don't you like your dad? He just left me. He just took off, divorced my mom, and took off. That's what I call a fat pitch across the meaty part of the plate. Okay, I'm using some baseball imagery here, but you know what that means? You're at the plate, and you're waiting to swing, and this guy just throws up a big old fat slow pitch. And this is your chance to wind up and knock it out of the park. When someone says to you, man, yeah, I never realized until I saw that, but man, I really don't like when he did that. That's a fat pitch. Swing. Take that as an opportunity to engage in discussion, get curious, and get involved in this person's life. Don't just say, I'm sorry, we're only on step 2 of the genogram. I can't talk about that right now. No, swing away. Fat pitch. I'll swing at you if you don't, okay? Understand? So, generally speaking, that's what we're getting at. And again, we'll cover that in a bit, Lace, but that's kind of the idea that we get here. Page 13. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about diagram 210. Remarriage is where each spouse has had several other partners. You can start seeing what they're trying to do there is trying to stay on the same line, but they have to kind of do these other things. Again, this is where I'm going to give you some liberty here to try and explain if it's a unique and important enough aspect to try and communicate within your genogram. The one underneath that, diagram 211, unmarried couple, which again you would think is not too much of a reality within Christian homes. Understand, though, the majority of non-Christians consider that a legitimate way of getting together, that it's kind of normative now for couples to live together for a while before they engage in marriage. Their thought is, well, if I'm going to be married to this person, I better find out about them before I get married to them. So why not live together for a while? That's actually kind of normative in a lot of homes. The reality is that's actually encroaching upon Christian families as well. Christians are justifying their actions of living together as well by saying, well, you know, if I'm going to be married to this person, I don't want to get a divorce, so I better live with him for a while. And they're exchanging the possibility of one sin by engaging in another sin. Sounds like another book that I've read somewhere before, Corinthians or something. But all of a sudden, there's nothing new under the sun, you realize. Nevertheless, that diagram of a man and a woman, not a husband and a wife, specifically through a dotted line. Again, trying to indicate that it's not a legal bond of marriage as recognized by the state and by God, more importantly. All right. And now we have the birth order. Generally speaking, again, when you're looking at a document, you kind of do it like you're reading, left to right. All right? Generally, if you have dad who's married to mom, you start with the eldest on the far left. All right? So, for instance, my mom's family, if I can remember this. Sorry, this is where my mom's supposed to come in. That's my mom's family. All right? My mom's the youngest of 11 kids. So when I look at your genogram, I should be able to know quickly, like if I was doing my mom and she's the identified patient, as it were, right there, wow, you're the youngest of a lot of kids. Or my wife, for instance, we joke about this with her. This is the Van Dyne family. If I was drawing Jenna's genogram, she's right there. And we kind of joke with her that she's one of the crazy middle child. Have you ever heard that kind of name, the middle child syndrome. Is anyone here a middle child? Do you agree with the middle child syndrome? Explain that out. What does that mean?
Well, because the first kids get the most attention because they're the first kids and, oh, I have a baby. And the last kids get the most attention because they think, well, this could be the last. We got to take 1,000,000 pictures of them. Whereas the middle child gets like 3 pictures of their life.
And hawks start attacking me? I mean, why am I so hated? Now with Jenna, she says it even more because yes, the first one, all the attention was given. The last, the baby, the child. And there's only one other boy. And so of course he got all the attention being the only boy. And she's the crazy middle child. I kind of laugh with her because I was a baby, so I don't understand what she's saying. But nevertheless, there is something to be said about birth order, okay? We're not going to talk a lot about that. And I'm not going to put all my counseling stock into one theory of explaining why people do what they do on birth orders. But I will say I do think birth orders are helpful as one part of the puzzle of understanding that it is helpful to know where they fall in line because it does give an indication of how they think and act. It's not a justification for why they think or act. Well, I'm the baby, so I have to be a jerk. Or I'm the oldest, so I have to be really arrogant. No, it's not a justification, but it's an explanation to help understand so as to challenge as needed. All right. Nevertheless, birth order is helpful. Question? All right, turn the page 14. Now this is getting to the question of adoption, foster. When it comes to an adopted or foster child, generally speaking, and I do realize there to be a legal difference, obviously, between a foster child and an adopted child. And normally what I say in those instances is that you try to, again, if you need to make up another way of identifying that if this is an adopted child, maybe, I don't know, this can be a foster child. I don't know. Something where, again, if you're uncomfortable with just using a dotted line for both adopted and foster, you're at least recognizing. Because I know some families that have had dozens of foster kids, but they've not all had a serious impact to the greater understanding of the family. Whereas this family maybe only had one foster child, but it meant a big deal. And so they're going to put it in this genogram. Again, this is where the art part comes in. You've got to talk with this person and say, well, I know you've had dozens of foster kids in your family. Are they all significant enough to put in this genogram? No, not really. Well, 2 of them are, and then you put those 2 down. Comparatively to an adoption, which is a legal bringing in of a child into a family. And again, that's not to say that they're not loved. It's just, again, you're trying to graphically illustrate that they're not a biological child. A friend of mine that I grew up with, he was adopted from Honduras, and he has 2 other siblings who are biological children of this family. And they would tease him all the time, saying, well, you're adopted, you realize. You know, they just kind of found you and brought you into our family. Because they were like blonde hair, blue-eyed, just typical looking kind of suburban family. And he's this dark skin, dark hair, dark eyes, Honduran little child, things like that. And they would always tease him with it. They just found you on the street, to which he would just respond, yeah, but they chose me. They didn't have any choice in you. They're like, oh, yeah. Which, when you think about it, biblically speaking, when Paul talks about our adoption, sons and daughters in Romans, it's a great point. We have been brought in to the family of God because we didn't deserve to be here. There's nothing biological about our connection. That was the problem with Israel, right? They thought they had instant access to God. We're Jews. We're the ethnic people of God. Yeah, but relationship with God is not based on biology, based on faith on the finished work of Christ, and hence our adoption into it, which is fairly significant, thank God. Nevertheless, going back to what this is, that's how you do a foster or an adopted child. All right? Going on. Fraternal. Identical. Twins. What's the difference? Genetically speaking, what happens?
Well, whoop or whoop.
And usually it sounds like that too. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Which one is the whoop? And which one is the whoop whoop?
Identical is when they're,
It splits apart.
and then the other one, there's just two.
There's two.
Right. This is 2 eggs, both fertilized at the same time, led all the way through a pregnancy, and delivered. They may look alike, they may sound alike, but they're not identical. Similar DNA, but not identical DNA. Comparatively to this, what happens here? Other than the sound effect, what is actually happening? It actually splits, right? And that's where they have the identical DNA, hence the same way they look, hair color, everything else.
Question. My cousin was a twin, but then his brother was naturally aborted. How would you draw that?
Identical or fraternal, do you know? Do they even, well, it was, probably you don't know. Again, this is where the art part comes in because they weren't delivered. They were in the womb, they died. So that's, if you remember, the spontaneous abortion was kind of almost like a little line and then the dot or the X. So at that point, that would be one way to graphically show that. Yep.
This doesn't deal with my family. This, I know someone, this happened to them. They had triplets, but there were 2 identical, and then there was another one that was born at the same time that was a boy, therefore not identical.
Fraternal.
They're fraternal.
Okay. So, man, you guys are giving me all these. And you understand these are all exceptions to the rule, which is why I say this is much more of an art than it is a science. These 2 are identical. This is fraternal. But because understand, they're all coming from the same point. Comparatively to lines that are drawn down like this, which is indicating birth order. This one was born, then a couple years this one, and then. But when they're all originating from the same point, that tells you they were all born at the same time, either as fraternal or as identical. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What was that TV show with it? Like
John and Kate plus 8.
yeah. What was that, like 6 tuplets or something?
They had 2 girls and then 6 tuplets that were, I don't know the exact, I think they were all fraternal twins. So the way that would look at, man, we live in an interesting day, don't we? So they had, I think they had a daughter and then a daughter.
The 2 daughters were twins.
Oh, they were twins themselves. Okay. You can tell I don't watch the show. And I'm okay with that. But then they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I don't know what they're, some were boys, some were girls, and some other things as well. So, and I don't know which ones were fraternal or if some of them were identical. I'm sure they did some genetic engineering in there to get a little bit of both, probably. But you'll have to ask John or Kate. But they're not together anymore, so nevertheless. Yeah, you hear all the scandal with that, right? Oh my goodness, that was a big summer scandal. John and Kate are no longer together. Yeah, it's very sad. It's very sad that they.
Well, apparently they were never exclusively together either.
Yeah, that they. This is Ben Matthews soapboxing now. Okay, you ready? That they would take in all this money and all this time to put their kids out in the limelight, and look what it's done to their marriage. That to me is atrocious.
You know, they had the big reveal they were going to do, something big was happening. I'm like, I hope they're canceling the show.
Yeah, but no, they're continuing on.
Yeah, but they're splitting up instead.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But hey, that's TV, right? That's going to make more, and I guarantee you the ratings have gone up. And to think, and again, I'm not judging their salvation. They both claim Jesus Christ as Lord, and I pray that to be a reality. But I do believe that we all, as parents, will stand before God, and He will ask us, what did you do with the kids I gave you? That's huge for me. And while it may make for good TV, it doesn't stand good with the King of eternity. And so we need to be very mindful of that.
Did you ever watch the talk show?
Never seen the show at all.
I was just wondering if you kind of sat back as a counselor and were like, there's the problem, because me watching it, they always had the segments where they would talk to about how they're.
I'll take that back. I did watch it once, and I think they were bickering with each other.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my wife, man, they really don't like each other a lot. Go figure, yeah.
Or just things like they would talk about how their kids always even came before their marriage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's a problem.
Right there.
It's gonna happen, and it did. I was like,
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the reality. But nevertheless, it kind of, if anything, makes me convicted that much more of what God's given me and the responsibility that I need to take as a parent and as a husband. So, lest I cast the stone against them. Any questions with all the genetic abnormalities in our world these days? Or who's the other one? The Octomom? Did you ever hear about this lady out in California? Had 8 kids at one time. And this is all genetically induced, right? None of this is really natural in that sense. But these, and again, it's very concerning for me because everyone knows about her. Her publicity now, this obscure little house mom in California, everyone knows about her now. And she's already got TV deals working it out with producers across the world. I mean, the royalties, the money that comes from this thing is incredible. But it's so clear how wrong ethically it is. And so to me, that these doctors continue to allow these genetic developments to happen, again, unfortunately, we live in a fallen world and we're seeing the effects of it in some really devastating ways because at the end of the situation, these are the people that are going to be affected, right? Yeah, they may make out okay. They may even get remarried and think they're happy and everything. What about these kids whose lives have been put in public to millions of people? I'm going to get off my soapbox now because I could really go on about some of the real concerning aspects of some of these realities now. Yep.
What if you don't know if someone is actually the spawn of 2 people?
Like how she said that, the spawn! If you're wondering, like say for instance, if a child legitimately is the biological child of this couple, if you don't know, it's kind of a best guess, right? Part of this, again, is getting into, that just got me curious right there. Why don't they know that that child is really theirs or not? What else is going on that puts that question in their mind? But that's a fat pitch across the plate, right? That all of a sudden, if you don't pick that up, well, yeah, we have this other kid. We don't really know if she's ours or not. Really? Tell me about that.
Well, and then there's other people also that I knew a family that they got, the mom couldn't get pregnant, so she had it implanted into her uterus,
A fertilized egg?
Yeah.
Okay.
And presumably it's the dad,
Mhm.
but what if it's not? Would that add?
Well, in those scenarios, it's not just presumably. Most often they'll use the sperm of the dad to fertilize the egg. The problem is they can't fertilize within the womb, so they do an artificial insemination using the sperm of the dad. There are situations where they may go to a sperm bank, say if it's a single mother, in which case, yeah, there's just an unknown here, right? And at that point, she's having these kids through artificial insemination through a sperm bank. That is a reality that's out there as well. And so essentially what you're doing is you're just getting rid of the dad. Yeah.
So if you don't know who the dad or the mom is, you just put it beside the...
Yeah, and again, because what are we saying here when we have this? And they're married. So if they're not there, present and married, that perhaps they could either be separated or they could be living together or they're just not there altogether. And so we're trying to graphically show some of these realities in some way, which, again, there's no perfect science for it, but that's essentially what we're trying to do. You still look confused.
I think I missed it. Do you not... Where do you put him?
Where do you put him?
No, where do you put the child that's you don't know who the dad or the mom?
Assuming that there's something here, say if it's marriage or separated or divorced or living together, they're not legally married, try to draw something there, even if he's not in the picture.
If you don't know who he is at all.
There is a man somewhere out there.
Okay, so just put a box.
So put a box there. There was, and then graphically explain the relationship with her now.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, sorry.
Yeah, he's there. We have no idea who he is, but we assume there was a man. I mean, we only believe in one miraculous virgin birth. But so yeah, if you're doing Jesus' genogram at this point, that'd be an interesting assignment. All right, page 15. This is what we were getting to before with the households. I was telling you about when these guys get separated, but this one takes the one daughter, this one takes the other son. and you start seeing these circles that are identifying households. Your stepfather, stepmother, stepbrothers, sisters, half-brothers, half-sisters kind of idea that the original family is now fragmented into other families, and it doesn't always work out very neat and even. There are bigger realities, and that's how you graphically show that. All right? Then they go into talking about some other examples. Freud's family. Page 17, his immediate household. Go to page 19. They try to show you some. Recording family information. So after you've kind of put the skeleton down, that's what the biological information is. After you started identifying dads and moms, kids, miscarriages, kind of who's involved in what family, household, and things like that. Now we're getting to the actual dynamics of the family, beyond just the biology of the family. Once we've drawn the family structure, the skeleton of the genogram, we can start adding information about family, particularly demographic information, functioning information, and critical family events. So turn the page over to page 21. You start seeing some of these family relationships, all right? Okay, let's take off the heretical teachings that I put on the board already and just do a normal family. Dad is married to mom. They have 3 kids. Let's say 4, all right? Make it a little interesting, all right? So we have this family. And on page 21, showing family relationships, we have a number of lines. Now, these lines are essentially drawn in between the family members. So, for instance, the very close or fused is 3 lines. So let's do it this way. Did I talk to you about what the very close or a meshed relationship is? Yeah, the mama's boy, the almost too close, that they don't have a healthy understanding of themselves and they're very dependent. And again, what do we call this kid since he's a boy and that's mom? Mama's boy, right? That's what that's showing. He is 22 years old and there's still this reality going on. When he's 2 years old, understandable. When he's 22 years old, something's going on there, all right? You have your fused and conflictual. Is that possible? That's a hard one, isn't it? Help me explain that one. How can someone, 2 people, be fused but conflictual?
The effect of one on the other is very, very strong, but it's a negative effect.
And it may not be always appreciated, right? In the original one, they both like it. They're both okay with it. Mom smothers the boy, and the boy loves the smothering. But in this case, let's go back to our 22-year-old. Mom may be smothering the boy. Boy's not really liking that too much. But she keeps on smothering him. And he keeps on. And there's conflict, but there's also enmeshment, and it's a messy, sticky mess called life. And that's essentially what that's graphically trying to show. There's a movie that came out a while ago with Matthew McConaughey called Failure to Launch. Anyone ever see that movie? And he's like a 30-year-old guy still living at home. And it's funny because at the beginning of the movie, he gets up, he goes to the bathroom, and while he's in the bathroom, his mom makes his bed, folds his clothes, gets his breakfast ready. I mean, she does everything for him. So why leave home, right? It's interesting. There have been some articles written on this of a new stage of life that people are terming adult lessons, not adolescence, adult lessons. Meaning you have a number of individuals that have left home, gone to college, maybe gotten a job, but decided, you know what? I'm not living like my parents do. I know the answer. Live with my parents. So they move back home. They may still work, but they don't have to pay rent. They don't have to do the laundry. They don't have to cook. They don't have to clean. And they got access to everything in life they want. Because there's an entitlement idea within our culture that says, well, as soon as I graduate from college, shouldn't I be earning at least 6 figures, driving a big, nice car, and have the house that my parents have right now, even though it took them 40 years to get there? It didn't happen, so I better move. And this idea that there's a large chunk of our culture that are just moving back home and not flying the coop or attacking Heidi through the window. I mean, whatever it is. So Brought back flashbacks for, you know. But that's what that means, all right? Okay, you got some other ones here. Poor or conflicted. And why is that interesting, especially there? They're twins. They're usually really close, right? They do everything together. They look like each other. They dress like each other. They have haircuts like each other. Maybe that's why they don't like each other all the time. Maybe there's something going on so that when they're talking about it, and again, it's interesting. Let's say this individual is the identified patient, and they're giving this information. It's from their perspective. But when they look at their youngest sisters, yeah, they really don't like each other. Now, their perspective may be a little different. I don't know, but that's who we're dealing with. And it's interesting to get it from that perspective, nevertheless. A close, healthy relationship is essentially two lines, all right? And again, I'm not saying that you have to draw every single relationship to every single person. What we're trying to get across here are the highlights, that these other kids might be okay with dad, but dad and this girl, what you're telling me, are really close. They have a really healthy, good relationship. It's not that he's really bad with these other kids, and he may want to draw those, but what you're telling me here is that there's a good, healthy relationship here. Does that make sense? So you don't have to draw every person to a relationship with every person. Otherwise, you're not going to see anything on your chart. You're drawing lines everywhere and doing everything. We're trying to give highlights.
Okay, do you want us to do this like on the computer, or like draw it out by hand?
Yes.
Okay.
I've had people that have done it on a computer, and I'm going to show you an example of that. I've had people that have literally brought a mural that they hand painted and framed it and have it to this day because that's how they pray for their family. Yeah. I'm totally okay. If you want to do felt.
Do different colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that's why it's so helpful. I recommend, again, you have a rubric that I give to you that actually one of the scales of marking is the creative portrayal of your genogram. If you just give it to me in black and white, I'm not saying that's wrong, but I probably won't grade you as high on that scale of the rubric. Comparatively, if you're willing to go a little bit beyond, actually put some color in that, help me understand graphically what's going on, it's going to help you a little bit more.
And if we think that like a previous generation would be helpful, like our great-grandparents would be a helpful generation to know about, should we include them as well then?
Again, that's up to you. Again, if you think that information is pertinent to helping understand, I should have said this earlier too, understand when this one genogram is done, that's a snapshot of now. It's like a picture, right? You're taking a graphic picture of your family today and all the relationships that may have affected it. That's why I personally don't put in my great-grandparents, because right now, as I stand, they didn't have a huge impact on me. There are aspects of them, if I dug enough, but who I am, the relationships I have right now, they weren't a big factor. They may be for you, and so it'd be helpful to put that in. Yeah. The estranged or cut off relationship. Again, say this is a family where she's actually like in her 30s. Right? Instead of this just being, this obviously is an old guy because that's the oldest one in the family. Say she's in her 30s, and they're in the biological family, but they're no longer in the same household. But they're actually cut off from each other. They don't talk to each other. They don't email each other. And again, you wonder, do families do that? Yeah, unfortunately, it happens quite a bit. There are family members that through time or problems or whatever have just decided to cut each other off and don't talk to each other unless absolutely needed to. It's sad, but it's a reality. It's important information. The distant, usually, again, highlighting a particular relationship between these two individuals. Yep.
Now, what, I guess this is more per person, but distinguishes distant as opposed to cut off? Like, we may view that relationship between, you know, our cousins or their aunt or whatever as distant.
Right.
Or maybe cut off, like how do we?
Between this cut off and this distant,
Yeah, like what, what's the?
there is no relationship here. They don't talk to each other. They don't contact each other. There's no relationship between these two people. Comparatively to where these people say they're in the same household, they might even eat meals together. But we're talking about the emotional, not the geographic. That there's still a distance between these two people. They just don't like hanging out with each other. They don't do stuff together, but they're still in the same household. But nevertheless, that's an important piece of information to know that they're distant. This is really saying there's no contact between the two. This is saying there's contact, but very limited.
What if they are really close, but they're not living in the same house?
Again, that's okay, because you may need to describe that in a different way. Like, for instance, I'm fairly close to my mom. We have a good relationship. And I would show that in that way. I'm first showing the biological. This doesn't automatically mean they're in the same household, right? Especially when you get to my age. My sibling, we're all apart from the household. But biologically, we're still connected here. And then you can draw those lines to illustrate right now where we're at. Does that kind of answer your question? Yeah. These are kind of the general basics of a genogram, all right? Any questions with that? And obviously your packet explains a lot more. This is going to be your map to building a genogram and trying to understand some of the realities that need to go into your own genogram. Are there any specific questions that you might have, or? No? And guys, like I said, this you have all semester to do, which is why you have, as needed, opportunity to come talk to me, ask me questions. Am I doing this right? Can I do that? Am I allowed to do this? I need for you guys to know I'm available to help you out. Ooh, whoa, nice. Sorry. I was. So with that said, since you have no questions, I assume you totally understand it, and you're going to do a genogram for me right now. Yep, it's true. I want you to help me out, given these passages, to construct a genogram. 3 generations. Starting with the patriarch, the main one being Abraham had many sons, many sons. Maybe that song is actually talking about a genogram. Do you ever think about that? Many sons had father. No, maybe not. Okay. What I need for you to do is start reading through the passages that I've given you here, all right? We got about 10 minutes to just start on this. And give for me highlights. Knowing what you now know about how to construct a genogram, give me some help in constructing one based on the information that you're seeing presented to you here. We don't have a specific identified patient. Moses is the one who recorded this. Questions of whether it was didactic or whether it was given to him through narrative. Nevertheless, that's where we get the information from. All I'm trying to say is, what's the information that we have regarding Abraham and his family? I am your hand to draw.
With Abraham. Abraham, upper row. Identify.
Okay, and how should I draw him? Because guys are square. Okay.
Are we double squaring?
Sure, that's fine if you want to identify him specifically. All right.
Mary,
Sarai,
Sarah.
his wife, Sarah.
Circle. Okay.
You can draw a dotted line to hate.
Yeah, leave dotted line to another circle from
Who's Hagar?
her maidservant.
Her maidservant. So,
But,
He slept with her.
yeah, so wouldn't that be a dotted line from him?
For him.
Yeah.
okay.
Because she gave her to him as his wife.
Would that be true?
And another one.
And another one? Well, again, read through the text. Feel free to highlight verses that specifically talk. Conceived.
Pregnant at verse 4.
Okay. Any guy, girl, twin?
Should we say that Hagar is Egyptian? Is that important?
Sure, it's helpful. Put a little pyramid there, okay?
And then she had a guy.
She, Hagar, had a boy. Okay.
And
Ishmael. My name is Ishmael. Okay.
And then
Squiggly line.
Between Hagar and Sarah.
Sarah and Hagar.
Okay.
Verse 6.
Obviously, there's some. I wonder why.
It was her idea.
Isn't that interesting, though? It was Sarah's idea to give Hagar to Abram. And yet now Sarah looks at Hagar with disgust. Why?
But she gave Abraham a baby.
And what was Sarai not able to do? Which is a big deal, especially when we're talking about Near East culture, right?
Yep. And then Sarah married Abimelech.
Sarai married Abimelech.
But she's still married to Abraham.
What verse is that in?
That's verse 2 of,
Marry him.
it's 20.
Verse 2 of Genesis 20.
Yes.
But did she marry?
There Abraham said of his wife, say, she is my sister. Then Abimelech, king of Ger, sent for Sarah and took her.
Doesn't mean they're married.
So,
But what does it probably mean?
They slept with her.
They probably did have some kind of a relationship, right?
They didn't sleep together.
Yeah.
They married, but he didn't sleep with her.
Yeah.
They
I
married.
didn't know.
They did marry?
Yeah,
Or like he brought her in. but-
yeah, he took, yeah, he took her to be his wife.
Where does that say that?
Maybe it's a different version.
A different
Well, I mean,
version.
like, I think in my version it's.
Well,
like
verse 6, it says that he didn't touch her.
that. Yeah. Yeah, because he kept her from.
That is why I did not let you touch her, verse 6.
So we're a little unsure. There was some type of taking. It wasn't sexual. It wasn't maybe legal marriage, but he's the king, so he's not. But nevertheless, what does Abram do? Just keep that in the back of your head.
He gave Sarah, gave Sarah to Abimelech, just like Sarah gave him Hagar, kind of.
He didn't.
Keep that in mind. That's all I'm saying. What else do you want to put in here?
That they're brother and sister.
That who are brother and sister?
Abraham and Sarah,
No.
because he's the daughter of the father, but not of the mother.
Is that in reality?
No, that's a lie.
That's the lie.
Really?
Yeah.
'Cause I thought they really were. Like they were.
No, I don't believe they really were, and that's why we look at and realize that Abraham was lying. That this is not your sister, this is your wife. Why did he lie about her, though, is the question. Again, who are we dealing with? The king, right? The king says he wants something. He doesn't do what he needs to do. Genesis 21 starts giving in some information. Verse 2 and 3.
Oh, yeah, it's not.
Finally. Great. The promised son, the deliverer, the one who.
They have a feast for him.
Oh,
They should have a good relationship.
who they?
Isaac and Abraham.
Yeah, they're pretty close. Not too close though.
Verse 9.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Wasn't Sarah and Abram half siblings?
half siblings.
Verse 12 right here. It's like, well, she really kind of was my sister.
Verse 12.
Is there any way that you mark that, or you just say?
I'm not going to go there right now.
There's not a good
Between
relationship.
Sarah and Ishmael.
There's
Step
not a good
sibling.
Step siblings, and there's this. Lacey, to go back to your point, not denying that they were half. Yeah, that's what I was saying. But the lie is still the priority of the relationship between him and Sarah was not the sister. The fear that he had over the king was why he predominantly said, "Oh, she's just my sister." That's not the truth, and so that's why we consider that to be the lie that Abram actually gave at that point. Yeah.
But should we show that connection with them?
Not this point.
Yeah, because that's going up another generation, so we'll just leave it here for now.
Sarah and Ishmael have tension in verse 9
Yep. Because Ishmael is mocking Isaac.
of 21.
Because what?
Ishmael is mocking Isaac, so Sarah was mad at Ishmael.
Okay. So Isaac and Ishmael have issues. Ishmael and Sarah have issues. Abraham and Isaac are okay, but Hagar and Sarah, this family's getting pretty crazy.
And then Isaac takes Rebecca for a wife.
And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah. So I'm going to try and now, we got another generation coming here. Oh, my bad. Yeah. Rebecca. That's her full name, right? Rebecca? It's a true statement.
Do we include
She
his
has twins.
father, her
Do
father?
we need to mention Laban? Because she is sister.
The sister of Laban.
Yeah, that else season of what you know. That you mentioned.
So she's the sister. We'll leave that out for right now. It is information that's helpful.
She has fraternal twins. Well, not fraternal, but they're not identical yet. So they're
fraternal. Yeah. Fraternal twins that are
Boys.
boys, yeah. I guess that always confuses me. I always want to say that they're not fraternal if
they're not identical. Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing because fraternal is brothers, but it can be a brother and sister that are that.
This would be important to make sure that you put Esau first because of he came out.
Is that important?
Yeah.
Split
Yes.
second before he came out.
And attention between theirs.
Wait a minute.
Divine
Isaac, and then-
Isaac loved Esau.
Isaac,
Wait, love, sorry, just joking. Jacob.
say.
I love
Oh,
you.
no, Isaac loved Esau.
Okay.
Right.
Becky loved Jacob.
There we go.
I think
There we go, that was like
Are we
mother's
going
corner
to
right
healthy
there.
relationship or healthy though?
All right. Well,
I feel like
again, if you take all the text into account,
it's probably unhealthy.
Yeah.
for both,
I don't,
I don't know.
I don't know
about
about
that
that
man?
I don't think
I think
Isaac's
it's a
was.
mom.
because they don't ever.
That's true, because they don't like do anything bad.
okay. What else?
Try to trick people. Jacob and Esau seem to, oh, they can have.
Yep, you got that.
What about God's relationship in this with blessing? I don't know.
He's way up there. I can't reach that right now. But it's in there. I'm just talking about the family right now. That's not to discount that reality, but I just want to raw this.
Like important.
It is. And again, that's why I'm saying I'm not denying it. But right now, I just want to get this relationship up here. Genesis 26. There is one piece of information there, verse 7, that I think is helpful.
He says that he's not the wife. There's the sister just
Isaac
like.
lies again, just like Abraham lied.
Yeah.
See that anywhere else before? It must be genetic. You have to lie, Isaac, because your father lied about his wife, so you now have to lie about your wife. But we say to them, no, you are not,
Determined.
but you are.
Perfect.
And we haven't even gotten to the craziness that's going to come here, okay? There is some crazy stuff coming here. So keep this mental image. I'm pretty sure this won't stay here till next week, but we'll continue this next week.